F.E.A.R Online. Yeah, this actually happened. After F.E.A.R 3 already pushed the franchise into a strange identity-shifting direction, someone decided the next logical step was to turn F.E.A.R into a free-to-play online shooter. And if that sentence already feels cursed, don't worry, the game itself was even more confusing. Today we're looking at the game that tried to keep F.E.A.R alive by turning it into something that barely resembled F.E.A.R at all. F.E.A.R Online launched in 2014 as a free-to-play, multiplayer first-person shooter developed by In-Play Interactive. Not Monolith, not Day One Studios, just a completely different team working with the F.E.A.R license. The idea was simple. Take F.E.A.R's world, enemies and spooky atmosphere and then wrap it all inside a fast-paced online shooter, with progression systems, unlocks and a bunch of modes that felt like they were pulled straight from early 2010s free-to-play trends. It had PvP, it had PvE, it had co-op missions, and it even had a story mode. Although calling it a story mode is generous, it was more like a series of disconnected levels loosely tied together with text boxes and voice lines. But the biggest question is, did any of this actually feel like F.E.A.R? F.E.A.R Online's gameplay was fine. Not terrible, not great, just aggressively average. Movement was floaty and gunplay was serviceable. The weapons felt like they were borrowed from a completely different shooter. The iconic F.E.A.R slow-mo, completely gone. The weighty punchy combat from F.E.A.R 1 and 2, also gone. The tactical enemy AI that made F.E.A.R famous, definitely gone. Instead, you got standard online shooter enemies that run straight at you, stood still, or spawned in waves. It felt more like a budget Left 4 Dead mix with early Counter-Strike clones. The PvP modes were the usual suspects: team deathmatch, demolition, capture points. Nothing that leaned into F.E.A.R's identity. The PvE missions try to be spooky, but F.E.A.R's horror doesn't work when you're sprinting through hallways with 3 other players bunny hopping around. F.E.A.R's atmosphere relies on isolation. F.E.A.R Online relies on chaos. It's a mismatch that never gels. So F.E.A.R Online technically does have a story. It's meant to take place around the events of F.E.A.R 2, filling in the gaps and expanding the universe. But the problem is that F.E.A.R's story is already complicated. Psychic soldiers, Alma's children, Armacam conspiracies, and F.E.A.R Online doesn't clarify anything, it just adds more noise. You get missions involving Armacam experiments, corrupted soldiers and supernatural outbreaks, but none of it feels meaningful. It doesn't expand the lore, it doesn't deepen the characters, it doesn't even connect cleanly to F.E.A.R 3. It's like someone took F.E.A.R's Wikipedia page, skimmed over it and said, yeah sure, we can make some levels out of this. The result is a story that exists, but doesn't matter. The biggest issue with F.E.A.R Online is simple. It doesn't understand what F.E.A.R is. F.E.A.R is a horror shooter built on 3 pillars: atmosphere, isolation, and AI-driven combat tension. F.E.A.R Online removes all 3 of those. There's no atmosphere when you're in a lobby-based shooter. There's no isolation when you're running around with a squad of players. And there's no tension when enemies behave like cardboard cutouts. It's F.E.A.R in name only. A brand slapped onto a game that could have been any generic free-to-play shooter from that era. And that's the tragedy. F.E.A.R Online wasn't offensively bad. It was just hollow. A game that didn't know what it wanted to be, built on a franchise that deserved better. F.E.A.R Online didn't last long. The player count dropped almost immediately, reviews were mixed at best, and servers shut down in 2015, barely a year after the launch. No big announcement, no emotional farewell, just a quiet shutdown for a game most F.E.A.R fans didn't even realise existed. It came and went like a ghost. Fitting, in a way. F.E.A.R Online wasn't the sequel fans wanted, and it wasn't the revival the franchise deserved. It was a strange experiment during a strange time for F.E.A.R, and today it's mostly remembered as a footnote, but it's still part of the franchise's history, and understanding F.E.A.R Online helps explain how F.E.A.R slowly drifted away from what made it so special.